the stay in movement, but I'm talking about the future of the movement. We're looking forward. Okay, so we had this great movement in 2008, and it's done a lot of good things, even to this day. But how can we kind of recapture some of that original spirit, and how can we even move forward and do even better in 2016? Because I think everybody, who wants to win in 2016? All right, well, you may not know that we've lost 900 state offices since the 2008 election, and we have lost the Senate and the House. So we have a lot of work to do to bring back where we were in 2009 when Obama first got into office. So hopefully we'll have a good discussion about where we are and where we want to be. And I will, and also we have Catherine Reed, who is a Democratic social media strategist. She trains Democrats on how to engage on all the different online tools there are nowadays. And she's very active.
So 8 years ago, I started my social media company in May of 2007 before people called it social media. And I started in the commercial sector, not in politics. But I quickly started working on the Obama campaign in January of 2008. And like everybody else, I was drawn in by the excitement, by the energy, by the fact that he was a dark horse candidate. But I started by volunteering in the office in Fairfax City, which is where I live. Standing in line, yeah, in Fairfax City. But you know what astonished me, and this is really a cautionary tale about how blind we are. I'm standing in line, and because they're giving tickets away to some event, and I'm standing in line, and they're passing around a clipboard, and they want to know your name and your phone number. And I said, why haven't you asked for email addresses? Now this is 2008, early 2008, and think back if you worked on the Obama campaign. They were not asking for email addresses. I mean, now it's like email, who can use this, text me or something. But the fact of the matter is, we don't innovate politics very well. And Obama brought great innovations through technology, but what he really brought was his community organizing concept, because he knew it worked. He knew that the only way that you can really build excitement is from the ground up. It's me talking to you, not him talking to you. He motivated and inspired all of us to share our personal story about why we were supporting him on the phones and on the doors. And there just hasn't been a candidate since who's understood you have to give people something that makes them excited. A movement is about how we feel and how we make other people feel. And he ran on hope and change. It was so simple. And it was so simple because what hope meant for me, or what change meant for me, for women's issues, or all kinds of immigration issues, each of us took hope and change and we applied to those concepts what mattered to us. And then we went out and we found other people who shared our passion. And we said, this is the man who is going to make it happen. Come with me. And so all of us became these foot soldiers, having interpreted two simple words to mean what we cared about. And I think candidates don't look back on how that worked and why that worked. I don't think they try to be inspirational or motivational at all. That's the Democrats. And there's an old saying that Republicans fall in line and Democrats fall in love. Republicans make people afraid. Every election this past year was about Obamacare and Obama. Obamacare, you're voting against it. Every election, it wasn't the particular candidate that was running, it was Obama who was running. We had to defeat Obama. The candidates running in all of these states, it was not them running. Allison Lundergan Grimes, they weren't voting against her, they were voting against Obama. And the Republicans set it up even in local elections so that everybody was voting against the president. That was a simple concept. And Republicans are motivated by fear. Democrats are not motivated by fear. Really, they're not. As much as we tried them to the whole Cuccinelli and McAuliffe thing, and they kept posting about how awful Cuccinelli was going to be. But at the end of the day, I think what brought people out was McAuliffe embracing things like LGBT equality and embracing things like women's reproductive health issues, standing up and saying, no, I'm for this, and it's uber liberal, and I'm embracing it. So ultimately, it wasn't fear of Cuccinelli, I think, that brought as many people out as especially young people, is like, this is the man who needs to lead us next. And so I think campaigns suffer from being in a very status quo mode where people running for office, especially the first time, are being trained by people who are like, let me tell you how to do it, I know how to do it, just grind, 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 make those phone calls, get that money so we can support the political campaign industrial complex, the people who do digital media, and the people who do your robocalls and make your signs and your mailers, we have to support them, shoes on their kids' feet, and I think that's wrong. And I think Democrats are not, in fact, inspired by any of that. And I think the people that are getting to these candidates, whether it's local candidates from the school board to races to get the Senate level, the House, the Senate level, congressional level, they're getting bad advice. And they are not inspiring us, and they are not motivating us, and we are not knocking on doors telling our personal story about how this person is going to make changes that affect all of us. And I think going forward, if we are going to make a difference, we have to think in terms of innovating the way we campaign. Somebody asked me about a candidate who went to the Board of Supervisors in Fairfax, and he said to me, do you think she's a strong candidate? I said, the question you should be asking is who is on the team? Who's talking about her? Who's out there talking about her when she's out in the room? Who does she have behind her raising money, putting together events, going around with her, grooming her for this next level campaign? I said, if you don't know, then that's the answer. It's not about her personally so much as who believes in her. Who are the people willing to go out and raise the money and pull together a team? And if it's not there, that's what you should be worried about when you look at a candidate. Who is advocating for them when they are not in the room? Because for Obama's campaign, it was all of us. It was all of us every day. And until we get candidates and we get people who want to be part of their messaging, I don't see it changing for us. And I don't know how we change it, because a lot of the people at the top of our party are very much entrenched in what they think they know about how it's done. It's kind of like people who will not give up on a mistake because they spent so much time and invested so much in making it that they can't let it go. So instead of saying, maybe we really don't know how to do this very well, let's try to innovate a different way, let's try to be collaborative. And again, young people, to me, are the place where you go to say, oh, the state song, okay, and I'm going to turn it over to you. The state song, oh my God, I don't know if Virginia, it's some sort of horrific dirge, Hallmark greeting card, awful thing. And I'm like, if it's not something Bruno Mars would sing, we don't need it, because no one's going to remember the words to it, nobody cares about it. Why are you trying to come up with a state song no one cares about it? Why? And this is where I think, Pharrell is from Virginia, is he not? Hampton Roads, right? Pharrell, Mr. Randy? Why the heck would you go to him and say, want to write a song for Virginia that we can all move to? No, because the people who were deciding on the state song are a bunch of, they look like they've worked for 396 years. And I will just say, two things that I keep talking about in Virginia. In 2019, our legislature will be 400 years old. 400 years old. We have the longest continuous operating legislative body in the Western Hemisphere. In 2020, women will have had the vote for 100 years, and 17% of our legislature are women. We have a problem, and if you don't, whatever you think about my vision, look at the data. 396 years of our legislature looking the same way. Now they all want to vote on some horrific state song that no one cares about. And so where are the voices of the people, the grassroots, the activists, the people who are going to live for the next 40 years with that horrible song? Where are your voices? And that's what we are missing. And I wish I could tell you I have some great answer for how we need to change this. But I think, first of all, being aware that we have to make changes is a place to start. Having events like this where you get together and you meet people and you're like, well, what can we do? Whether it's through Alexandria Young Democrats or the Young Democrat organizations, through individual campaigns you're working on, all of this makes a difference. But we are stronger together than any of us will ever be trying to do this one person at a time.
Well, first of all, it's been 8 years.
Since the launch of Obama for America. Pretty much all of it.
No, I remember, tell you, I'm not that old, but I feel as though I'm aging every day. It's awful. Jesus, take the wheel. But I remember when the things were just getting off the ground. I remember there was a date auction a couple blocks over. That was years ago, and to be 8 years, congratulations. So my name is Richard, folks. And we're celebrating our 3rd year of the Richard Fowler Show. So we're just getting there in age. We are the youngest syndicated progressive radio show in the country. So we're really, really proud to have that. I hate the fact that I'm the youngest syndicated progressive show, and I'm 28 years old. And my conservative counterpart, 16, he's a crazy abortion guy from Alabama. We have some big problems. Just putting that out there. The Democratic Party depended upon labor unions. Labor unions was the density of the party. That's what turned out the vote. All across the country, both in the South and the North, wherever, it was labor unions that turned it out. Now labor households are being attacked like it's ridiculous. It's going out of style. In places, Illinois this week, the governor put another attack on the labor union. So now, as Democrats, we have to become a little bit smarter. So we have to figure out how we can sort of change the game. And to change the game, we've got to make community our new density, because labor unions used to be our density. You go to Teamsters, you go to Teachers Union, and you'd win elections, right? And I have friends in this audience who have run local elections for years, and they'll tell you, get the unions out, you win an election. Not anymore, because now we're facing this uphill battle where unions are under attack, because Republicans understand that if they can get rid of the density of the Democratic Party, right, the thing that makes us so powerful, they can literally take the legs out from under us. And that's what they've done across the country, right? Kentucky used to be a union state, and Alison Lumber Grimes is afraid to admit that she voted for the president, right? And everybody knows she voted for the president. She was a delegate to the convention to elect the president. Like, really? But either way, that's neither here nor there. But I think, and if people make fun of me because I'm on Fox, yeah, that's fine. I'll take that. But you can learn a lot from them, and I like the places where you learn. And one thing that I've learned from Fox is the ideal of how to build community. Because no matter what happens, in about 2 or 3 hours from now, when my Sean Hannity interview airs, and somebody in here saved my earpiece, it was on the back of my thing because I just left the studio, I will probably get 1,000 tweets from crazy people telling me that I'm a race baiter, telling me that I'm crazy, telling me that I'm going to go to hell in a handbasket, and those are the good ones, right? The bad ones are awful. I blocked half of them, but they're still like, every time I block one, another one appears. They're like really, really, they're like roaches. You can't get them. But either way, what you learn from them, what you learn from Sean, and he'll tell you the same thing, is that I understand what it takes to mobilize my community. The community of people that surround me, they might be batshit crazy, but I know how to mobilize them. And that's what we've got to do a better job of as a Democratic Party. We expect a lot of times for our ideals to win out. Like, well, our ideal is better than theirs, and thus we win. But that's just not true anymore, because they've become artful at communicating and tapping into people's, whether you call it fear or you call it hope, they learn how to tap into that, right? And that's what we've lost doing. The president's been able to do it, right? But the party, generally speaking, hasn't been able to do it. We haven't been able to tap into what it is that gets people out there, right? And whether you can call it hopes or fears, but some of us want to be debt-free, and most of us will never be debt-free because thanks to Ronald Reagan, we have student loans up the ass, right? So we've got to find a way as a group of people, as progressives, as whatever you want to call it, as the Democratic Party, as the far left, whatever. We've got to find a way to communicate, right? And that means we need to get away from this ideal of talking about our 10-point policy planks or talking about what we can do better and start communicating through stories. How do we tell a clear and coherent story to the American people that gets them to vote for you, right? And listen, we're going to have an uphill battle in 2016 because we are slated, we don't know who's running yet, but the job of whoever runs, whoever they might be, is to galvanize people with a story, right? Not a story of Wall Street, not the story of, a reset button. It's a story of what is happening in Main Street every single day, right? The story of the single mother who works at Walmart and works at McDonald's to make ends meet. The story of the woman who is praying that her state will raise the minimum wage so she can take care of her kids. And that's what we've got to. We've got to find a way to find those people and get them out to vote for us. And listen, I tell people all the time, the Tea Party and the progressive movement have the same root. It's this idea of populism, us versus them, right? And for us, it's us versus Wall Street. For them, it's them versus big government. But they all agree that there is the man who's holding us down. And whatever that, for me, it's Sally Mae, and she's a woman, and she's awesome. There's something, and our job is to fight against that. And we need to, and so that is what I think, if there's anything that I could take away from being able to do the work that I've done, is we've got to figure out a way to communicate a clear and concise story. right? And we've got to find a way to tap into people. The reason why the president was so effective at doing it is because he was normal, right? He was a normal guy. He seemed normal at the time, but he was normal when he ran. And I think the second time we voted for him, because like, hell, they gave you a raw deal, so just swag out. He didn't do that either, but it's okay. But I mean, the truth of the matter is for us to really make change in 2016, it's going to start with us here in this room. And it has to happen outside the Beltway. I'm privileged enough because of the work that I did. I get to travel all across the country. And you realize a lot of things when you leave the Washington smog. One, you realize that most people don't have MSNBC. That's one thing that I've learned in a lot of the states, a lot of the flyover states, which I spent a lot of time in. Two, you realize that in a lot of the places you go to, because the industries have left, whether it be for outsourcing or whether it be because, wages too high in America, or whether it be because we're signing trade deals like nobody's business, that these communities are hollowed masses of what used to be American greatness, right? So now the question becomes is how do we make America great again? And that starts by getting into the community where the decisions are being made. Think about it. So you could run, tomorrow we can win the presidential, Elizabeth Warren could be president tomorrow. That still doesn't solve the problems happening in Ferguson, Missouri, right? Because only the people in Ferguson, Missouri can solve Ferguson's problems, right? And I've been to Ferguson twice now, right? Hey sister, how are you? And they'll tell you the fact that nobody turned on their election means you have a city council that's completely checked out. You have a prosecutor that doesn't know his left from his right, and you have a police chief that could care less about all of these things, right? And so what we've got to begin to do is we've got to cultivate young candidates, and beyond cultivating them, we've got to invest in them like we've never invested before. The reason why people don't understand where all these Republican maniacs are coming from is because they've been in office for years. They've been on school boards, land commissions, water commissions, mayors of small towns, and then they become Joan Sierra, so like, God, where'd you come from? But the truth of the matter is they've been around for years, and they've learned how to cultivate, they've built skills, they've learned how to build lists, they've built fundraising apparatuses, and yes, we don't have the money, but I'm always a big believer that the power of the people will always overcome the people in power no matter what happens. But that requires that we become a little bit more, scrappy in the game that we play. Right? We got to be scrappy. We got to be out there. We've got to run people for school boards. We've got to run people for land commissioners. And then we've got to also learn how to use media to our benefit. And that means we've got to find alternative sources of media. Whether it be YouTube and the Young Turks, which I'm proud to be part of the Young Turks Network, or it be going on to Fox, right? Because all the polling data indicates that there's more progressives and populist-minded people that watch Fox than any other channel on television, by sheer numbers. Simply because on a good night, Bill O'Reilly gets 3 million views, and on a good night, Rich Maddow gets 200,000 views. So the statistics tell you that you're going to find more people who we can eventually convince to be on our side are watching O'Reilly. That's why I go on there. And I'm like, hey, listen, it's not that bad. But beyond that, we're also talking about a lot of union members who are on these, who watch pipe fitters, bricklayers, coal mine workers, who after working 9 to 5 go home and watch Bill. The reason why they watch Bill is because Bill connects to them. Rachel, they think she's too smart for her own good, right? But Bill connects to them. He's, he understands their pain. He feels their sorrow, and maybe Kelly might give him a wet dream. But God bless America, right? But either way, we've got to find a way to communicate to those individuals. And we've got to find a way to convince them that our way is the best way to do business. And it's been done before we've done this. I was watching today, randomly, I don't know why, Jesus take the wheel, but I was watching a documentary about presidents. It's President's Week Day weekend, and I thought I'd reminisce for a second. And I was watching a documentary about LBJ. And they were talking about how LBJ was able to sort of, in his, this war on poverty and the Great Society, he was able to sort of win almost all the states, besides, I think he won 44 states in his election. And I said, wow, that's a remarkable thing. He won 44 states by being as progressive as possible. He's like, I'm going to create the most progressive laws. I'm going to feed kids who are hungry. I'm going to put people back to work. I'm going to create Medicaid. I'm going to create Medicare. I'm going to spend like it's going out of style. And the people are going to vote for me. In all 44 states, even states below the Mason-Dixon line. After passing the Civil Rights Act, which didn't make any sense. But people realized at the kitchen table, LBJ was working for them. And so as a party, we can't abandon that legacy. Whether it be FDR or LBJ, people who said, listen, we're going to do what's right right? We're going to make sure that that kids who are sick can go to the doctor. We're going to make sure that kids who are hungry can get food. We're going to do what's right, and we're not going to run away from that. We're not going to run away from our record. The reason why we lost in 2014 is because we ran away from our record. There's one rule that you can always learn from Republicans. Now, you never run away from your record, you double down on it. You're like, yup, I voted for that, and I'll vote for it again if it came to it. And you look at the Democrats who won elections, Gene Shaheen, who said, listen, I voted for Obamacare, and I'll vote for that shit again. I'll vote for it until the cows come home, because everybody deserves the right to go to a doctor. Point blank, period. She wins, right? When you have candidates who are like, ooh, well, I was sort of voting for that, but I really didn't vote for it, because I meant to vote for something else, but I was asleep, and my staff, they lose. So we have got to, no matter what happens, in this next election, we have 22 seats up, right, that we have a chance of winning. We need to nominate candidates that are unabashedly liberal. This is my record. I'm going to stick on it no matter what. That's how we win this election. We don't win this election by sort of, hop and skipping the line, because let me tell you this. I know the Republicans very well. I hang out with them way too much in the green room. But I will tell you that they are committed to doubling down on their record. That is their plan. Their plan is to double down on their record. And I was working State of the Union night doing press coverage, and I watched Ted Cruz go from camera position to camera position talking about his crazy ass record. But he's like, I am willing to go double down on this record. I will sell this record. And he's raised millions of dollars, and he has supporters. Because I think, ultimately, and I'm going to sit down now, I promise, but I think the American people, whatever it is, we just like honesty. If you give us honesty and you tell us who you are, we'll believe it. That's why, as crazy as Mark Warner is, he's able to win an election in Virginia. Because he's like, listen, I'm rich, I know I'm rich, but I'm honest. Same thing for Terry McAuliffe. The second time he ran, he's like, listen, I know you think I'm a carpetbagger and a snake oil salesman, but I'll be your snake oil salesman. He wins, right? American people like honesty. If you can be honest about something, you look at Ronald Reagan, Iran-Contra. Oh yeah, well, I think we made some mistakes, but life gets better. Re-elected. Ridiculous numbers. Americans love honesty, and I think we just need candidates, and we need to find candidates that are just honest. All right.
All right, great. There's a few things that I wanted to point out and kind of follow up on what they were saying. How many folks are familiar with George Lakoff?
Best book ever.
All right. Well, he wrote the book "Don't Think Like an Elephant," and I think he's got a new one out. Like, no, seriously, don't think like an elephant or something. Where he talks about kind of using a positive frame, and he talks about talking about values as the way to win elections. Because one thing that I always feel a little uncomfortable with is when we talk. I totally agree with what Richard said in terms of money. Like, if we're talking about what we want to talk about, and we're engaging the way we want to engage, there are more Democrats in the electorate in a lot of communities than there are Republicans. In the presidential race, of course, but even, on more local elections. So, instead of, that's why I have a problem with the Koch brother argument, because I don't think the average person knows who the Koch brothers is. Talking and totally hating on the Republicans, it's something you can do, but I'm a big believer also in the 80-20 rule in a lot of things. And that's 80% you should be talking about with your message, and then maybe 20% contrasting yourself to the other side. I think I don't know if that's an informal rule or a real rule, but I believe in it.
One last thing I will say too that I think it's important to remember, and it's a quote from Maya Angelou. People will forget what you say, and they will forget what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And going back 8 years, there are a lot of things that Obama has said or did or whatever that has gone way past. But we remember how we felt. That's why we are so nostalgic for 8 years ago, because we remember that feeling that seemed like once in a lifetime. It was historic. It was about us. We were making a difference. We were the ground. People have emotional intelligence, and Democrats get into the weeds on our facts and our truth, and we hit people up. My truth is better than your truth, and my PolitiFact thing is better. People don't care. Make them believe that you're sincere, that you believe it, that you really are on their side, that you are listening to them. One of the best ways for people to believe that you are the greatest person that ever has lived is to listen to what they have to say. And again, our candidates do so much talking about stuff nobody cares about, whom they will never remember, that they forget to be authentic. They forget to just be the person that someone else wants to believe in.
One other thing that actually kind of follows up on that is I'd also recommend people watch the TED Talk by Simon Sinek. It's called Start With Why. And it's one of the most popular TED Talks of all time. And he does talk about like Apple and stuff and how, Apple's kind of like, I don't want to say they're overrated, but a lot of their brand really kind of values them even beyond what they are. And it's because the kind of the values that they try to represent in like being inventive and creative. I mean, that even kind of overwhelms what the CPU can do, And the example he does that's political is with Martin Luther King, it was the I have a dream speech. It was not the I have a plan speech. He did not have a he didn't read the Civil Rights Act proposal or anything. So just keep that in mind that you want to be aspirational. And on the digital side, Dave Lightman, who's the Secretary of Technology for the Virginia Democrats, he also works for Microsoft in D.C. He actually wrote on epolitics.com the other day about the idea of having, I'm a big believer in the 50-state strategy. I hope many of you are familiar with it and how great Howard Dean did as chair. But he suggested a 50-state digital organizer strategy where in every state you have digital organizers that are empowered to connect online with supporters and different communities. So, and I'll give you one example of how big an issue this is that, if you go from the top of the Obama campaign, the BarackObama.com right now has an event platform that is 8 years old, actually. It looks almost exactly the way it looked in the beginning. So you have to actually use HTML to put an event on there. I do not have to do that with Facebook. And then you flash forward you actually go to a more local level. Mark Warner's campaign, which had some trouble this past year, had to get out the vote event at the end of the year. I could not find it or their offices for their campaign on their website or ever mentioned on social media. And I think that nowadays, for me, Twitter is my number one source of information. You have to be using email, social media, your website to inform about the basics of your campaign. Are you going to have a big get out the vote rally at the end of the campaign? So these we talk a lot about the data and how good we're targeting ads, but let's not get too much into the hype of how great we are with tech. When some of the answers are they're not low tech, but they're kind of mainstream tech. Most of the folks in this room can figure out how to do a post on Facebook to share an event. And hopefully you share this event. But so those are a couple key things I wanted to give people a sense of how. Actually, a lot of these things are very solvable. It just takes like a slight change in direction, and we can bring back some of the things that have worked really well for our party and our movement. So anyway, what we're going to do next is have some young Democrats come, and I'm going to get their take, because the Obama campaign was fueled by young people. And so I thought it would be really great to have some young Democrat presidents here. And it turns out that some of our Maryland young Democrat folks that were going to be on the panel, a lot of them had emergencies. So we're going to mostly have a very Virginia-centric panel. But nonetheless, we have, Sean Loeb's right here. He's the Northern Virginia chair of the Young Democrats. Right, you guys on the chair. Maybe let them sit for a minute. And then we have Valeria. Come on down. How do you pronounce your name again?
Val.
Okay, because I got involved late, I went to Rhode Island next door. I went to Pennsylvania, and then I knocked on doors in Virginia. I had never done anything like that. I was really solid behind Obama once I got involved. But there is something I noticed that was very different about the Obama campaign than I've seen from other campaigns. I got involved in a little group called Generation Obama. That's the group that this evolved into, Network for Progress. I created a careers and networking group to help people find jobs because we hit a huge recession right after the 2008 election. I was out of work for the entire year of 2009 without a full-time permanent job. In addition, we had all these grassroots efforts. When I lived in Connecticut, there was this little thing called Organizing for Connecticut. It had nothing to do with, it was really unofficial. We didn't really have an official link to the OFA campaign. You have all these unofficial groups. In fact, one of the co-sponsors of tonight's event is America's Impact. They were foreign policy professionals for Obama back during the Obama campaign. There are all these little groups and all these grassroots efforts that really put together the Obama campaign. There's one challenge to that. One is they all came together for Obama, but they didn't necessarily come sign up to slug all the details for the Democratic Party. So it's, I'm in the Young Democrats, and I was involved before, and I am today. I was involved in the Connecticut Young Democrats before I moved here. But Obama won kind of in spite sometimes of the official campaign. I know that Jim wanted to bring, the high-level flanks, Plouffe, Cena, Axelrod. But really, who won this election? It was that personal story. I completely agree with Richard on that. That was the first point I wanted to make about this, is that whether it's Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, or somebody that comes out of nowhere that becomes our nominee, we need to have that grassroots effort. We need to have those people that really want to get behind the person running for president. That's point number one. Point number two is the message. And I do want to piggyback over our first speakers in the fact that it is true that if you run away, one of the things that we run into is people defend the raising money. And in fact, Terry McAuliffe was once the committee chair, prolific fundraiser, terrible at winning elections. And we've been there before. I like him as a governor. I respect him very much as a person, but back then we were not winning elections. And the reason why was we were all focused on raising money. Fortunately, the Citizens United decision turned us back to that pre-08 model of 50 state and brought us back into we have to raise. We're going to get crushed if we don't respond to the Koch brothers. We have to raise by any means possible. But guess what? We set records. We set records with fundraising in 2014. We lost seats. So we have to look at what when you're running a business, you have to look at the bottom line. Is the bottom line? It's a little different in politics because in the if you're thinking bottom line, you raise money, you make your shareholders happy, everybody's happy. But what if you put together a bad product? Eventually, you're going to make money for a while, but if you have a bad product, it's going to fall apart eventually. So I stand behind. We have to have a cohesive message. We need to have a positive message, and we need something that people can stand behind. The last thing I'll bring up before I pass it along is I'm just going to do a reality check. If you live in D.C., Virginia, Maryland, do you know who your local councilman is? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to say this. You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm serious. You really should. And the reason why is because we were just saying it right here. Are you going to come to this event and hear us talk about how Richard is telling us that they're building this farm team and all of a sudden Joni Ernst gets elected in Iowa? How does that happen? That's how it happens. This is a wake-up call, folks. This is a serious wake-up call. I don't want to be negative. I generally like to be a positive person. Go on Google, go on your phone right now if you need to. Look up who your local councilman is. Look up who your state delegate is. Look up who your school members are. Thankfully, I know who all of them are in Arlington and a lot of the Northern Virginia chapters, those who do plug into the Young Democrats. We should get involved in Young Dems because we'll help you there. We'll help you get to know the local elected officials. Because clearly, we have a race in 2015. Ultrasound bills and the state song came up because, and the 396-year-old people voting in the State House delegates happened because 3 hands went up when I asked if you knew who your local representative was. We have to change that right now. In Virginia, if you live in Virginia, that's more urgent. You have to really do it right now. There is an election this year. We're electing state senators. In Virginia, you have 4 years. So we're not going to have another chance for 4 years. If we get another state senator elected, we could actually take the majority and stop some of the nonsense going on in Virginia, and at least the state senate. The state house is gerrymandered to the point where we're not going to take the majority, but we can do something about it if we start by paying attention now. So get to know who your local people are. What we could do as Democrats is make the politics local again, because Richard's absolutely right. Catherine's absolutely right. They're making these local elections, board of supervisors, school board, they're making them into national elections. We need to go back and make them local elections and start talking about local issues and grow our communities again. And until you start to learn, and this is something I learned when I talked to a state representative back in Connecticut, all politics is local. Go with who you know. Get to know people. Get involved. And we'll make a big difference when we do it. Thank you.
Are we just speaking?
Well, I mean, just give like a brief.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, everyone, I'm Matt Brown.
Let's take questions at the end for everybody.
Yeah, I'll keep this short so we can also hear from other two panelists who are far more qualified than I am. But I'm president of the Arlington Young Democrats, and during the day I work with the No Kid Hungry campaign. I actually grew up in Alabama, where Democratic politics really isn't a thing. So when I graduated with my master's in political communication, I came up to DC, and David Axelrod's firm actually gave me a chance to get my start. And there and jobs after that, I learned a lot about how to organize communities and what it really takes to build a movement. And I think Axelrod and all of Obama's first campaign and then his second campaign, that's what they tapped into. How do you build a movement? How do you motivate people? We've heard some great insights, I think, into how they did that. And I won't share too much of my a little more inferior knowledge on it. But I think on the national level, there's a few things it comes down to. One of them is that with our digital messaging at the moment, I've seen a lot of digital offices on campaigns and sort of in the organizations of the party that put digital in the development and the fundraising department, but I think we have to start to see digital, that's where the conversations happen, right? It's not just about bringing in a dollar, it's not just about bringing in money. And that gets to what Catherine talked about connecting with people. But to some degree, I blame the insights we picked up from Fox in our strategy, because we're thinking, if we scare people enough in a subject line, if we scare people enough in a message, we can get $5 extra now. And I'll be gone next week, so I'll take that $5 extra. Or my election's in 2 weeks, so I need that $200. But that's not how you organize a community over a series of 4 years. That's not how you organize a community over a series of 8 years. Fear works for 5 minutes. And so I think on the national level, that's an issue we have to deal with, is how do we use digital, not just to fundraise over the next 24-hour cycle, not just to scare some people or to put out a cool infographic that makes people happy enough to donate $1, which isn't as great as the $2 for the fear message. But how do you organize a community on the long term? And on the local level, I think on a similar note, it's about finding messages that connect to people with where they're at. We're having an event this month in Arlington about net neutrality, because a lot of people don't really understand net neutrality or how it affects their life. We're doing a similar thing with affordable housing. When we hear affordable housing, we think, well, we need the most poor of our society to have housing. But I'm like, yes, but you're also 23 and you're spending 80% of your salary on your rent. That's your life right now. And I think when you hold that mirror up to some people, they're like, oh my gosh, this issue matters to me. This is something I care about because it affects me. And finding ways to do that online and in person are going to be critical to the next election. And with that, I turn it over to my co-panelists to share some of their thoughts.
Thank you. So my name is Val. I'm the president of American University College Network. involved with campaigns back in 2012 at the high school level. I was in charge of the northeast side of Albuquerque, New Mexico, engaging people at the high school level, so going out to football games, getting those who were able to go to register to vote, and then getting basically their friends together on a big campus. And that's what really opened the campaign and political world to me when I realized that the way we got people engaged in 2012 is that everybody had a part of the campaign with them. And not everybody was a political politician. Not everybody knew everything about politics, but they were part of it. And so what I think is really important to be moving forward into 2016 is really engaging youth by educating them. Those policy talks, and like wherever you guys are from, if you guys are from a campus, if you guys are from a community, talk about the issues so that people actually know what's going on. I mean, you pointed out that some people are not always aware of what's going on, like housing prices and what's affecting them directly. That's why we need to be hosting these conversations. And that's honestly what I believe is how we want 2012. And seeing that the youth, especially the millennials, we're becoming a very important voting bloc. And we played like a huge role in key states this past 2012 presidential election, and it's going to happen again in 2016. And if not, it's going to be much more influential. So with that being said, it's really about community engagement and getting people involved, but by giving them the tools to take a part of the campaign and take a part of like the political sphere. Because we don't need to be exclusive in the political world. We can include everybody, and it could be at any level. It doesn't have to be completely at us. Very lucky to be leading really great organizations. But it could just be somebody hosting that conversation or going on the campus for the very first time, because that's how people get involved, and that's how they learn, and how they'll make more change on their own. So building a community in the long term, give them the tools to continue building a community back where they're from as well. So there's my insight.
I'm David Cordero, the co-president of the Fairfax Young Democrats. And, I got involved in politics really a long time ago. I'm 30 and I've almost been involved in politics about half my life. I've seen a million different House delegates races on all the way up. I've worked on a U.S. Senate race, a Lieutenant Governor race, a House delegates race in Virginia, and I've learned really interesting insights about, I think, all of this from each of those three. The Senate race was Tim Kaine, who was run by Mike Henry, who was the guy of Virginia campaigns. He ran a really old school campaign in the sense that it was by book, but it was really good. It was really tight. Everything was on a message. You know, Tim never deviated. He was really great. Raised a lot of money. Everything we did perfectly, and we won. But you can tell that that's a method that wouldn't be able to translate elsewhere. We fast forward the next year to the lieutenant governor's race. We have this issue where one of the candidates is trying to do the Obama thing. We've heard it a lot. We've seen that in a lot of states. They're trying to run an Obama campaign, an Obama-style campaign, an Obama-style campaign. And the problem with that is the very nuanced difference between just organizing and community building. Because you really have to have the two. You organize to build a community. You have to have a community to be able to organize effectively. So they work together, but they're not exactly the same. You can have all the tools to organize. You have millions of field organizers. You have a really cool web presence, really great social media, lots of Twitter followers. But if you don't have a message, if you can't build that community, you're not going to win. And that's what we saw in the opposite campaign that I was working on. We were outspent 3-1, but we still won fairly comfortably. And I think the other candidate, if he could have put together that message, if he could have built that community saying, yes, I'm going to vote for this person, I'm going to vote for this person, that would have made the difference for him. I think it's possible. I don't know. But the point is, he didn't quite put it together and he lost. And then following that, the House Delegates campaign, very local, very small area, really small neighborhood, running against a 30-year incumbent. He's been the mayor of that town, been in House Delegates forever, with a first-time candidate. When we put out a poll early in the summer, we were down 20 points, right? Kind of makes sense. At that point, everybody started throwing in the towel, saying, well, there was a lot of possibilities. If you look at the numbers, this district voted for Obama, this district voted for King. This district should be ours. Look at the demographic changes. Over time, he's been getting less and less and less votes. when we got that bad poll, people started giving up on us. We had this sort of closing meeting and said, okay, well, hell, like Richard said, we got to be honest to ourselves. Let's just be ourselves. Let's run the campaign. Let's talk about the message that we want to talk about, not the message that the consultants in the party are saying. You need to talk about this in order to win. You need to talk to these people and raise this money, because that wasn't happening. It wasn't working. When my candidate started being honest, we started talking about what was important to her, most important to her, and how these things were affecting other people, not only in her district, but around the state. That's when we started seeing huge momentum. We started picking up. We ended up losing that race by 32 votes. It's a 30-year incumbent. Out of 12,000 votes, we lost by 32 votes. He's still outraising us. But when she was honest to herself, when she ran that kind of race, that's when she was able to pick up that momentum, because she found the message. Even though she didn't have all of his money, she didn't have all of his paid organizers. Of course, these are high school kids who got his list and then just threw it away in the trash. We saw them do it. And that's another thing. He had all this army of people who didn't really believe in it. These were high school kids who just wanted the $5. We had people who were committed to it. And the same with my lieutenant governor candidate. We didn't have any paid field staff. We couldn't afford it. But we had this army of volunteers who put so much time, I think some of them took time off work, that really showed the difference. We had this army that really believed. And that's the way that organizing and community building works together. We can have all the shiny toys, but they're not, no one's going to play with them, but what's the point of having them? All right, well, thank you to our young guns. And now we can take a break if you want, but we can open this up to questions. Oh, and I'll let you make. Does anybody have any announcements of events or anything coming up? I'll just do that real quick, and then we can have people ask questions. For Warren initiative, and since 90 days ago, we said we were going to try to get 100,000 signatures by organizing people across the country, by getting Elizabeth Warren into the 2016 conversation, and we did just that. And now we have MoveOn.org and Democracy for America, all part of the movement to help draft Warren to run for president. Over 300,000 signatures. This President's Day, we're going to be organizing visibility and a coordination with MoveOn.org all across the country. And so I know a lot of you guys, by a show of hands, how many of you guys have decided who you're supporting for president in the Democratic nomination? Okay, how many people are undecided? Exactly. So that's the reason why we need to have a debate. All across the country, the Republicans are dominating the airwaves, they're sucking up all the oxygen, they're going on their book tours, and what they're doing right now is they're shaping the political climate for 2016. And it's going to be up to us, in the words of Elizabeth Warren, we can whimper about it, or we can whine about it, or we can fight back. And so I'm ready to fight back by supporting Elizabeth Warren running. I'm a former Hillary Clinton guy. In 2008, worked for her campaign, love her to death. And I think it would be great if we have both the two strongest candidates in our party running for president. I hope that since Elizabeth Warren is fighting back all along in cable news and the United States Senate and all the issues that we care about, that we can count on you guys to fight back too. Louisa, I know Jim's ready for Warren. Elisa is in the back there. We have some literature we're going to hand out if you're interested. You want to sign up? We'll be standing right out here when they let go, and appreciate you guys giving the time.
I think you may want to.
How to do the reports. To me, if you reached out to young Dems with the message that you are training them to be the finance person on somebody's campaign, that would be a win-win for everyone. It would be a win-win for young Dems who have the motivation and the smarts to do it, but it would be a win-win in getting on from school board to the board of supervisors to any election as the finance person and working your way up.
Well, here we are.
I'm telling you, I think you got something that I like a lot.
Any other questions?
State, and pretty much any election that goes through, it's already decided beforehand. And so I'm curious what kind of ideas you have for southern states when it comes to the Democratic race in 2016. how do you actually engage people and try to get them to realize, yeah, there's a select few that are out there and like really care and really want to make their viewpoint seen, really want to encourage their friends that you can make a difference, but how do you mobilize those people that think that it's not worth it and that their voice is going to be heard?
What's where you from, Candace?
South Carolina.
Okay. Well, I mean, one, you guys have one Democrat activist. But two, I think number one is to start small, right? I think winners, like the famous political theory says, winners win. So find a really small race, whatever it might be, and galvanize around it, right? Galvanize around this one particular race, whether it be school board, land commissioner, House of Delegate, district, whatever it might be, galvanize around it and say, we're going to win this race. We're committed to winning this race, right? And before you know it, if you sort of tap into people's hopes, tap into some of the issues, because a lot of times, especially whether it be dark blue, it happens on both sides, right? You have your deep blue states, Democrats sit at home, like what happened in Illinois, where a really, really blue state, but Pat loses. And then you have your really, really red states where people are asleep at the wheel. And a lot of times, most incumbents, a good chunk of incumbents, are asleep at the wheel. They expect to win. Oh yeah, we're gonna win. No big deal. We'll be fine. So what you gotta do is you gotta, find out what your election clause is. Maybe what you do is instead of running somebody as a Democrat, run as an independent. And you galvanize around that. But find a way, find a small race in your relative community, make community your density, like we're just gonna focus on community building. Where can we make partnerships? All right, so we have, the Young Democrats here, we have the NAACP there, we have the Urban League over there, we're gonna all come together, we're gonna piece our shillings together, we're gonna run this one candidate for school board. And you'll be surprised at the impact that you'll have. I mean, we see it happening all the time. A great example is Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where it's a very, very conservative school board. It's sort of backed by millionaires and billionaires. Teachers decided they were going to come together. They were going to organize. They were going to use community density, and they took over that school board. They ended up going to a runoff election, but they ended up taking over the school board simply by saying that we're going to come together. We're going to really, really work together, and we're really, really going to get in the grassroots. So that's how you do it. Right, like you can't sit here and think about we're going to try to win the governor's mansion because maybe it's a very good goal, but it's highly unlikely. But you can win, you can win a race block by block by talking to people on the block. Because I guarantee you this: the person in that school district is not doing that, and they've probably been there for 80,000 years, and they're probably pale, stale, and male. They're all three of those things, and so it's about figuring out how do you galvanize around this guy's not working for anybody, whether you're conservative or you're progressive, he ain't working because he's sleeping.
Well, I'm excited.